kind of peers were up late last night monitoring all results. And I was so grateful and proud of our county's website and how well it worked.
Thank you.
And how quickly those results came up. You were way ahead, like News 8000 took, not, I shouldn't throw out names, but I was just super impressed with the timing and the apparent, as far as I know, accuracy of it all. So thank you.
We hope it's accurate.
Thank you, IT.
We hope it's accurate because with one race, it's only 100 votes.
I know, it's wild.
We hope it's accurate. It should. There's no reason to believe it's not.
It was the first election that I actually could get live. Usually it's like, I guess I'll go to bed and see what happens in the morning.
Because we're the forgotten county and our clerk's office, our IT stepped up.
It was great.
And so it was a big help from Connor. And yeah, we set up, we stay downstairs. We don't even come up here because we don't get visitors, but we set up for visitors and we didn't get any. There is no reason to come. You can sit home and watch it on your screen just as quickly as you're going to see it in the office. That's a little bit of an update.
Thank you very much. We'll add you officially next month, or if that's good.
That's good with me, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, before, maybe I could just leave. Are you going to really talk anything about?
No, I do want you to stick around.
I'm going to stick around.
Just for my agenda item because it touches on you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
You
Thanks,
can tell
Jerry.
broke with who's there.
Okay.
You can give.
Thank you,
me your
Nikki, for letting that little moment in there. Let's take up definition of authorized signers on behalf of Vernon County. Potential action item.
Sure.
I need guidance from you guys, so I'll give you kind of an intro here and then you can tell me where to go. And my thoughts are we'll get nothing done action-wise today unless you guys surprise me. But I anticipate that no action today and would probably advise as much. I want you guys to sit on some of my questions I'm going to present here in a second. And then I see no reason why between now and next month we can't iron it out. I got my head around the questions I needed to be asking you guys, and that's where I'm at. So Bobby, listen, and Jerry, listen, because it touches a lot on both of your guys' departments or offices. But when you look at signing authority, that's a very general category, if you will, that could be talking about various things like who can pay the bills, who can sign the checks to pay our county bills. Who can initiate and determine procurement policy, and if it requires, like, say it's an RFP that requires some monitoring and signatures by county folk, who has those authorities in regards to the procurement policy. And thirdly, who has the authority to enter into contracts with folks that reflect and define what those relationships are as determined through that procurement policy, right? So kind of at least three different categories. Don't you look at me like that, Dave. At least three different categories. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm looking at also, well, let me back up and say also, there's some statutory authority here and definition here already. We could rely upon just that as well as some clarification of policies and go that route.
What's that?
Or
What is that?
660607 is the statute that talks about who pays the bills, who signs things. Jerry, as clerk. Under 660607, parent 3, or no, I'm sorry, parent 1, he's authorized to pay all the bills after getting vouchers that he's verified, and after the government oversight saying, yeah, you can pay those vouchers, then he can sign those checks. That is the same statute. You guys may want to look at it at some point. I mean, I know it's not super fun reading, but it's also where it talks about you guys, if you go over approved budgets, that's where that 2/3 rule comes in. It's in our statute. It's not made up. You got it. Vote 2/3 or more to approve the authority to spend over budget. That's in the statute. And then it also talks about, let me look here. transfer orders. It addresses also e-payments, taking into account that we may have like ETF kind of accounts, the monthly regular bills that we want to set up that way. It addresses all that. So that's all statutory. We're good. We're covered on that. Now, whether or not all of those who need to be aware of what that means is another question, and maybe an educational time to make sure our committees and or staff are aware of what those statutory obligations are and who has the authority in those contexts. Could be appropriate, but the statute's there. So do you guys want to consider first adding anyone to who can pay the bills, or are you feeling comfortable for now with the statutory authority there? To include others would require an ordinance expressly, or resolution, but it's cleaner, an ordinance in this context, expressly stating as much, that in addition to the clerk, XYZ folks have the authority to pay our bills. So I don't know if the need's there. If it's there, you can do so. You do it by ordinance. Who's going to sign the contracts is another category that.
Which I think is what really prompted.
Just the contracts, not the procurement policy, because that's been a very large discussion that I know Bobby's been working on and hoping to get ironed out. I don't know where that currently stands, but that certainly overlaps with and informs in part the contractual authority. So are we talking about just who gets to sign the contract?
I'm listening to everything. I think this whole agenda item stemmed from.
I think you're right. I think you're right. That's the case.
So, like many things, especially in government, you open you start peeling the onion back, and it's not quite as simple. But that is where it originated from, is who can sign contracts.
Are there any statutory suggestions now?
On who can sign the contracts. I can't say with 100%. I don't know for sure. I will double check. I don't know for sure. Yeah.
Jill, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to put on your radar that Carrie was the signer of our DocuSigns. So we currently have no signer. So this week I received 2 contracts to the state for funds I have no signer for. So this is kind of a critical thing at this point for us.
Yeah, it is. I want you to reach out to me separately so I don't forget about this and can help you.
They've sent DocuSigns to me.
Who's they?
So,
To the state.
And I just need to know who it is because I have to replace Carrie in our state system with the appropriate signer. And she was by law the appropriate signer in the past.
because of the statute for an administrator, so would that go to Amy in interim, or Bobby, what are your thoughts?
Well, she's not.
So that was, my understanding was that was outlined within the job description when it was being discussed. Right about that. Administrative coordinator. Typically for contracts, municipality and county, what happens is an attorney, whether it's for council or municipal attorney, reviews the contract. The elected official or administrator is a signer, and finance also reviews and signs off if there's a financial impact. And that's very typical in local and county government. As far as the checks being dispersed, they're even at municipalities, it's always clerk, treasurer has to be on the checks that are processed. Who processes those checks? That is up for interpretation, whether there is a finance department or not a finance.
I'm not sure that's exactly what we're talking about. I'm not saying who's signing the checks. I'm saying who is signing the contract.
Right.
And so prior to Carrie's position as a county administrator, the county board chair signed ours.
Correct.
County board chair.
And
Chair.
if what I'm hearing is right, that the administrative coordinator, the board is anticipating that those duties include the ability to sign and enter into contracts, that would be okay to do. It then my question is it the board's intentions that the chair and administrative coordinator both sign, or is it the intentions that only administrative coordinator does?
So the job description says, if I'm looking at the right, so negotiating and signing contracts within the approved budget on behalf of the county board with guidance from corp counsel, including intergovernmental contracts, partnerships, and operational goods and services.
So can the chair delegate someone else to sign on his behalf?
Oh, wait, that's what we wrote in the administrative coordinator job description. So does that cover what we're talking about?
I read it, I'm visual, not.
I always object to the job description. I mean, you can use a job description to define a role, but that doesn't grant authority, is my objection.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the intention of the job description are the roles that we're providing to the job. So, I mean, that is the authority. I don't
So
understand.
the authority comes from the county board to grant authority.
Right, and the county board approved this job description.
Well, but where my objection comes in from is that the county board doesn't approve all changes to job description. And so this committee or someone
I
can change a job.
Will
description.
say that I do agree that it's cleanest just for record purposes and clarity that it could be in accordance with current or whatever, but
Yeah.
it could acknowledge this, but it probably certainly doesn't hurt. And it's probably best to have it also separately stated in resolution form at least.
Okay, so I want to stay on track with this. I guess my question to that thought, which is fine, so do we resolution every single line in a job description?
No, but through my corp counsel lens, I'm going to say that something as important as signing a contract that then assumes legal duties and exposes liabilities means that it's critical that it's acknowledged outside of any job duty.
That makes sense to me. So I just wanted to point out that's how it was written for this role to address, I believe what Jill was saying, that the administrator prior had that authority. So what were we going to do in the gap? That's why it was in there.
And I thank you for pointing that out and for Bobby bringing it up and Jill's comments. And I think that what I'm seeing after that reminder that that's in the job description is indeed that the county's already determined that the administrative coordinator is the appropriate individual for signing contracts, subject to those additional expectations as stated in the job duty form. With that said, the committee may today, acknowledging that this has been discussed and acted upon, also find that it would be appropriate to condense in resolution who has signing authority, generally speaking, in the county, and that is namely the administrative coordinator with the same expectations and contained in the current job duties form that I said.
I understand that.
Okay, I'm just making sure. So yes, I think that's best practice, make everyone aware. How do we help Jill right now?
We help Jill right now because I am, you guys make the finding, you're going to make the recommendation going forward that to the board that administrative coordinator has the signing authority. We have already approved a current job description that requires our interim administrative contractor to fulfill duties, including the signing of authorities. It's going to be that interim until there's any change that conflicts with that by the board. So the board's given the authority right now.
Okay.
Which means, Jill, in short, if you didn't catch all of that or hear all of that, that our interim administrative coordinator has the authority, ability, and should be the one that's signing that contract for you this week.
Jill?
Yep, thank you
Hang
very
on a
much. I
second,
appreciate
Jill?
that.
You heard that? Okay. Lauren?
I know it has to be an elected official that's responsible for government funds, and by the board electing that conveys that authority.
I'm not sure if I followed the question, but I will say that to keep in mind, and this may answer your question, tell me if it doesn't, that there's a difference here between the procurement policy and the actual legal contract that reflects and defines that policy, right?
Yeah, it's my understanding that, now Amy would be able to sign because she has been delegated by the board that authority.
Right. Yes, you are correct.
I mean, someone that's just hired, you could not, without board approval, give them that authority.
Yes, I'm not sure. I see. Bob
I'm just going by
following
like our fire department, a certain township sends someone down there as their delegate, just said, well, you go represent us. There was no, minutes as to that person being delegated the authority to delegate government funds, so technically couldn't vote, so.
I guess that's my question. Is there anything that we need to do with the state or Jill to acknowledge this? I'm just thinking of when I came on, like, there was nothing done in advance to give me the authority I needed to do a lot of what I do.
Sure. I don't think so in Jill's context, but with that said, I also don't know what this contract is.
Okay.
Oftentimes you'll see that, for example, banks with like depository kind of accounts are going to require proof that you have the authority on behalf of the body you're representing. I doubt there's that case in the context of a contract here for services. But I don't know that for sure.
Right, and that's why a lot of our banking agreements, our signature cards and authorization are signed by Karen and Mary as authorized signers. Disperse those, to have funds dispersed and accepted in those accounts.
And then those banks, I guarantee you, have something on file signed by us that says, yep, we agree, those are the two and only two.
Yes.
That was one of the reasons why I disagreed with that job description, was that I thought a department head should also be a co-signer, an elected department head.
We have, I know.
Oh, we got an elected clerk.
No,
I've never.
I'm not elected.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Why don't I just do all the signing from now on and be over it?
I think that would be awesome.
It would be.
I also think if I make contracts vary, and like I have some grant contracts and reports that Lauren has to sign and others that Carrie can sign, and through CDBG we have to designate that and say that, so
That's so true, and I'm glad
some
you
don't
bring
need
that
two
up.
signatures.
And that brings me to think it would be a good idea to have that catch-all language saying something like, unless a particular contract requires otherwise, or as otherwise required by law, but absent those requirements.
So I think the intention in the job description is good. I hear what Jerry and you, Nikki, are saying to make sure that we make it real. So can you bring
Here next month.
back here next month? That's one of your three-pronged.
I think we're good with the other two, at least for now, and likely all together as far as who gets to pay the bills, because I don't see any reason why you don't rely on this statute here, and I haven't heard any. The procurement policy is Bobby's wheelhouse, and I know she's got her head around it a lot. She's done so much research on adjacent neighboring counties, what those procurement policies look like. I don't know the current status of that or where we are on it, but I also don't think it's necessary to discuss further today as far as related to authorities.
There's going to be a draft of the first round of the policy out this month for review and additional tweaking.
Okay.
Carrie?
I just want to know if Bobby has any comments regarding signing for paying bills, contracts, not contracts, paying bills, payroll, those kinds of things with respect to the finance department.
I have a lot of comments about that. everything that is run through our department as far as issuing payments is done after the approval process. None of it comes to the department for review prior to a committee, a board member, anybody approving anything. So that process should be looked at and addressed, and it is one of our bottleneck issues that prevents payments from being issued quickly. As far as contracts go, I have seen in my past where there is a review sheet attached to a contract that gets signed, where there has been a review and verification that Nikki signed it. I reviewed it to make sure that there's adequate funding, that the budget is there, and then it usually goes to an administrator, mayor, board chair of that accordance, and then whoever is the authorized signer signs the contract. But there is still that cover sheet that says these 3 areas have at least reviewed it before we've gone into and enacted on those agreements.
Yeah, I've seen that practice in work actually. And I think that might be something you want to further investigate here, because you don't want things going through or contracts being processed that corp counsel hasn't seen, or if it's going to require accounts and any specifics from finance to be established, they need to go through. So it's probably requested by a department head, and it goes through the 3 or 4 steps of who it's got to be reviewed by before it's finalized.
Yeah. And then those final signature sheets stating that those 3 departments had reviewed it. Once it's signed, everything goes to the clerk's office for retention, and they're in one central location. Right now, we have stuff that is housed all over the place. It's very difficult to find any contracts, amendments, where the funding is going to be coming from, any of that kind of information. So that needs to be part of the procurement policy and process, which is going to encapsulate the entire organization and all of the board to be on the same page as far as how things are going to be processed.
Dave and then Lauren.
I was getting a little diluted. What are we going to do for Joe over in human services?
Amy.
You, okay. You need a motion to that effect?
No,
Okay.
the board approved it through the approval of the interim administrative coordinator, including her job duties for.
Lauren.
I think what you're kind of talking about is a tickler sheet where you've got a list of things that all these things have to be, this one has to be signed by these people, and that goes to the first officer. And, Jerry would not issue a check unless it was signed off by all the people on his cover sheet. So it's like a tickler sheet for a contract.
Not like what, so it should requirement not. It would be a requirement.
Required.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if, for example, we were entering into an agreement for a road and we contracted with Fowler and Hammer, for example, they would have to have their insurance in there. They would have their insurance certificate. They would have to have their engineering and architect designs. They would have their bid specs, all the materials listed out. And then as highway verifies that the stuff is being used and the progression keeps going, then they're in accordance with their contract, we're in accordance on our side, and if perhaps the road fails, we can go back on that contract.
Okay, so it sounds like this is the procurement process that you're working on right now, that we're not quite to a place to fully review it, but it's in process. I think there's going to be complexities to it, and I would, if you haven't done this already, are we talking new contracts, renewing contracts? So like how deep do we go with I've never heard it called a tickler sheet, but I'm going to use it today because it's playful. It's okay, but like a process sheet essentially. So it sounds like that's in the works, but we're not quite there yet. Maybe next month we can see a draft of where you're going along with
Our procurement policy, I'm familiar, I can say, I mean, it's a lot of work she's put into it. She has so much knowledge around it. You guys will have to be on your toes and paying attention when she's presenting such information to you. But know that it's a really, it can be an intense process with a lot of information there to address. So I just want folks to be
So we should
appreciative that
have
it
it-
may not be a quick turnaround from beginning to end here. And I know she's already put in so much time, but there's likely a lot more to
Yeah,
get to the
and
finish line.
Yeah, and as the organization has updated and moved along with different processes and structure, the procurement policy itself changes structure.
So this goes to finance first.
Yeah, it's just, it only related to the agenda item today insofar as if the committee was looking for info on who can sign as part of that policy, and I wasn't clear about that, but we'll keep you guys posted as appropriate if that works for the committee as far as the procurement policy.
I think that's good. So what I hear for next meeting is you're gonna come with a draft of
Signing
authorities with taking the intention of the job description, but also tightening up the parameters for other areas.
Yeah.
Do you have something?
In between that, just for department heads, because like Jill needs quick turnaround on that, I just want to say, I can sign as Carrie has signed, especially if they're renewals, but if it's something new and involves money or negotiation, I would just reach out to you first to make sure you don't need eyes on that.
Any question as to whether or not you should sign the contract? Yes, reach out to me, encouraged, and yes, you have the authority. Just as if Carrie were still here, you are the Carrie, so to speak. The board has given you that authority.
Glad we got that settled.
Yes.
And I understand what I've got to do between now and next meeting, so I don't have any questions for you guys.
Nikki, could you email it, only if it's feasible, could you email the statute that you think our eyes should be on that you reference for? And is it something that should be on a board agenda as like an educational piece, or should we just take a look first and then discuss?
I think just take a look. I don't even know that discussion will be warranted unless after you guys look at it, you think to yourselves, I can think of a time when we may have a need for somebody else to be, if that's the case, bring it back up. But yes, I will
But
send
as
it
an
to you.
educational piece, I think would be good for us all to. All right, anything more? Human resources. We will go through the voucher. So I need a motion to bring $620,251.35 of the resources vouchers to the table.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Oli and Mary, and discussion or comment?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Focus there. So part of that, $287,220.59, that was actually, when I brought the courts bill, to the last meeting, and I didn't really fully understand what was needed. I actually had you all sign the incorrect bill. So just to cover all my bases, that's why I added it to this one as well, just because that was actually the one from the previous month. So on this one, yeah. So that's why it's so large, is because there's actually two. The March and the April are both on this summary sheet, because I just wanted to be sure that there was an approval process for both of them.
We do the last one?
So
If you remember, it was her first meeting
Yep.
and it was, she brought the best information she thought she had at the time, and it was only part of what we owed essentially. So we're making it real on, is that a fair statement?
that's
We're making
basically
it real
exactly.
on paper.
Yeah, I wanted to make it real and documented correctly on this summary sheet, because it would not have been on the last summary sheet. Other than that, the rest of them are pretty legitimate. You'll see that there are some double payments due to the January bills were not paid. Just there was some confusion, so I've been kind of like back paying every month. So I'm trying to get that all adjusted. So if it does seem higher than normal, we're just kind of getting where we should be. Correct. Yes.
I do want to give Tricia some props coming in with no transition really from a former person and finding these quickly and catching us up quickly has really been,
Yeah, so I
you're doing really
apologize.
good.
It wasn't done sooner, but hopefully moving forward. There's one more you will see next month for Unum. That was from actually last year. That will be adjusted, but that will be on the next one, just to give you a heads up. Other than that, hopefully we are all caught up moving forward unless there are the items that I'm not aware of at this time, but hopefully we're good.
Well, okay, how come last year?
It wasn't paid. I'm not sure why. I was just notified that our November bill wasn't paid.
Just, I can echo, I work with Tricia quite a bit, and Amy. Our new hires are really working hard. They're doing good stuff, and me being contracted to work with both departments, I feel like. But yes, it was difficult to access that information. It was just a result of not in access of that info, not Tricia's fault.
Any other questions about anything on here or?
Nope.
We'll see that one next month.
Yes, so I'll bring that. It's actually getting paid this week, but since it's an April weekly check, I will bring it to the summary for next month's meeting.
Good job.
Thank you. Trying.
Okay, all those in favor of paying human resources invoices or vouchers signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. You have on here FMLA leave policy, potential action item. Do you want to bring that up?
Yes, I'll bring it up, but I don't actually want to take action on it. We want to take more time to review it, but if anything, I just want to bring it up that it is something that I am reviewing because some of the statements in the policy are contradictory to each other. So it's something that I am looking at and want to make sure that before I present it as an action item, that I do my due diligence to make sure that it is worded the way it should be. I would like to bring it to department heads just to kind of get their input on past practice and take their past practice and my knowledge and put them together and move forward with it. So more informational for today.
Sure.
We don't have nothing in front of us today.
Okay. The document was given to you, but it's more for review than anything. I had highlighted some of my questionable areas. But that was pretty much all that was done at this time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That's 425.
Yes, and it's actually 425 and 411 because both of them do bring up FMLA and leave policy. So they were kind of related. So I kind of put both policies in one because I didn't want to update one and then next month or in a couple months bring back the next one. I thought it was made more sense to bring up both of them at one time.
You may not have these answers. Is there a maximum number of hours that can be banked for ELD?
Is there a maximum number? I believe it's 200. I could be wrong, but I do believe it's 200.
Mary, do you remember the max for ELD?
Yeah, I think
I'm
so.
thinking that's correct because
That
we do
sounds
have
right.
a max. That sounds right to me.
Good.
I could ask them. I think it's right.
Is that in here that I missed it?
I do not recall seeing that in there, to be very honest, as I was reading through it. But I do know that looking at past minutes, and stop me if I'm going too far with anything, but that this was a topic that wanted to be discussed. So if that is something, if there is anything that I need to review and research for future meetings, please let me know, because I did see that was in October, November past minutes, that it was something that.
Your department was directed to look into
Correct.
further.
Yes.
Well, an ELB has come up here in many ways recently, how it's utilized with COVID pay or not. So it probably is, the ELB bank is probably showing up and it danced around a lot of different things. Now that the COVID leave that may be why you've seen a lot of it, because it was discussed often in relation to that.
Can vacation be carried forward?
No. So at the end of the year, what happens is whatever vacation they have remaining goes into the ELB bank.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is carried forward. But it is
In a different.
Charlie,
I believe your ELB tolls are 920, and there's an exception to that if it's been denied. then it can be carried over into the first 2 months.
How much did you say?
I think it's 920 is the total for ELB. And then technically PTO can be carried over if denied based on existing policy.
Because I know Vernon can't. Employees can't use them because we need staff. Can't get staff, so portion of the work is carried forward.
Oh, there has been some ELB.
It was 9:20.
We have to finish. We have to find, we have done committee, some work on ELB and changing something.
Yes, we have.
You need to find out where those records are. I'm remembering it surrounding COVID, but when you bring up those changes as well, I want to make sure that we have it documented.
Also, is the sheriff's department different than,
Your contract
So that's,
is not part of the union contract though.
the union contract is totally different because that's different leave schedule than PTO. So I know that's the same as color.
this is a big
Yeah,
topic.
and my concern is, did everything on a committee level get to where it needed to go? And I don't know.
Memorialized or condensed in writing.
And I don't know, I know.
When I look back at minutes, there was a lot of no action taken, and then there were no other additional.
That could be true too, because just discussion.
You really need to have the department heads study it first and just bring it to us.
Right.
Lauren,
I think, I was on the committee and I think that's 6 months, that's about 6 months on the extended leave that 120. I think that's really ringing some bells here, especially that carrying over the 2, or if you were denied.
Yep.
I think, but we have to do some digging, Trish,
Yeah.
minutes to find out what.
What committee would that have been, this committee?
or we bring what we know right now and because that would be in what we know now. No?
I think it might have been done when personnel was solid personnel without into this.
2 years.
But I remember those discussions, but you're saying those wouldn't probably have landed by now?
Well, like, just going on what they said, just because it happened in committee doesn't mean it happened all the way up the chain and got recorded someplace.
It also sounds like Tricia's not come across any action items in the recent past that we would need to confirm or follow through with in the form of memorializing, however appropriate. I think what I'd say, just from for council lens, is if you do come across action items, make note of that. If it relates to your department, you're saying that. And if you have any question as to whether or not that was ultimately memorialized, then bring it up with this committee or me so that we can follow through and make sure it was.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would like to just start fresh and move forward instead of trying everyone to remember what was said.
No, I
what was
agree.
talked about.
I just think it's also legally
Yeah,
required of us
correct.
that we
Oh,
actually memorialize any action
Yeah,
that's done if that
absolutely.
wasn't the case. But it sounds likely,
Yeah.
hopefully, that's not the case, that there were action items not
Yeah.
memorialized.
I would hope to just create a consistency throughout all of our departments so that one department isn't doing something different than another department. Is my hope.
Mary?
Lauren, when we're on the personnel committee,
Until it got all in mind.
so that helps you timeline.
Yes.
It was 2, 3 years ago was the last.
Is it the not memorialized?
Charlie, you had specific numbers from what policy did you get that from? Just in the, so somewhere there's this specific, because you had those numbers, so as.
Same with the 200, it's defined, it's just not defined in the 2 policies Tricia has before you guys do.
Okay,
Just wondering where these policies are.
that's what she's having trouble
You
finding.
can't even find the policies. That goes back to my comment before. I had requested of her to find a contract for me, and all of her emails and files have 0 content. So while she was told she had received records needed, she certainly didn't. I will meet with you, Tricia, because I know I've got some past archived, if nothing else, policy saved. we'll work together and help you find and figure
And
out.
maybe
what's
you
there.
can help with because someone, like you were able to cite clearly a policy that was written. So that's what we need.
I lived in.
So that's where we need to find.
Sometimes departments where departments have their own policies and it's not a county policy. So
Well,
we can, that's where we need to,
I've been told that it's different departments. And not meaning, I know the sheriff's department has a separate set of rules and such, other departments and
Same.
And that's what you're trying to get to, centralization.
I agree with that.
I could go through some of those files too in the HR that's on the L drive and see if anything jumps out at me. But then Trish and I have been talking about, let's see where department heads are in terms of these policies. I guess our guess is there's going to be inconsistencies and then really streamline that moving forward. And we do have a department head meeting scheduled for April 19th. So,
Do you include the sheriff's department in your department head meeting?
yes.
And one other question, what was your last comment about the world you live in or something?
Well, that's those numbers of PTO and all that, that was my baby.
Well, that you were responsible for a while.
Like, you may be a really good resource.
Yeah.
because You have hands-on experience with it. Not to give you more work. But you can. You brought it up. Yeah, the PTO, I look forward to you cleaning up some of the language because it says it accrues, but it's not an accrual method. So the whole thing is a little different, a little funky.
And I've been working a lot with Bobby as well because it does directly affect HR and the finance department. So I can't make a policy without her being aware or a change without her being aware because the system has to.
We have limited capability.
Yes, yes. So there's a potential that we may adjust now and then when we get a new system and we do have more capabilities that if the wording may be less correct.
Okay, so you're gonna bring more back next meeting. This is kind of an inform to let us know where we're at, and it sounds like Amy and Tricia have a plan to uncover some of the inconsistencies within policy.
Might be an ongoing.
Yep, that's fine. Any more questions on this topic?
No.
Oh. Yes, your report.
Okay, as far as recruiting goes, we had 4 new hires for March, 10 accepted job offers that we are, that are pending that we're working on. And then we're also working on 3 offers at the moment. So, you know, that just means that we're checking references, doing background checks, drug screenings, such. There have been 10 terms in March. However, a lot of those were on-call positions that we found that were actually not working. So it wasn't, 10 people that were full-time and decided to, terminate employment. A lot of them maybe hadn't worked for several months and we just decided that there's no reason to have them on the books any longer. So they were removed. I signed, actually Carrie signed a bank at home through Associated Bank. It's a free to all county employees, so there was no budgetary impact. But we do have a partnership with Associated due to our HRA. And all this bank at home does is it allows for financial seminars for our employees. So if I wanted to have a topic about something in regard to financial stability, they would come in and talk to our employees for free. So that's just a perk, a benefit for our employees that I could then offer like lunch and learns that they would come in and talk to our employees. Also, there would be additional offers for employees if they were to open up an account or get a loan from Associated if they weren't previously there, that they would get like an additional offer of like a monetary amount. So that was just something that they had brought to our attention. Like I said, we're already associated through them for our HRAs, for HSA, HSA. So I just continued with that. Other than that, we are reviewing the entire policy manual. Trying to take it bit by bit, just because like I'm trying to take the bigger ones, the ones that have already came up that may be concerning or have impact. So I'm kind of hitting those first, but eventually Jenny and I will be reviewing all of them, updating them all. We're looking at updating the onboarding process, making it more streamlined, working with the IT department, make it more efficient and less timely. Also working on updating all job descriptions related to the wage scale. I was instructed that the titles that are on the wage scale are the titles that we should be using. Therefore, the job descriptions need to match whatever the wage scale states. And then in turn, giving that information to the finance department so they can then update their system. Because right now there's inconsistencies across the board of titles and job descriptions and such. Yeah, so that is kind of where I'm at. Any questions for HR?
How is Highway doing with filling their slots?
They are doing well. Currently, we have a crew leader position that just opened, and we have a highway position that just opened because we did have someone that has resigned recently. And but I already have had candidates reach out for that highway position. The crew leader position will be hired internally, and then Bill will be hiring summer intern as well, as he always does.
The crew leader, is that person retiring?
No, that is actually a replacement position for Dusty Evinger that had previously been in that position. Bill just hadn't filled it. So now he's moving forward.
Oh, they're doing over the nursing home.
That would be the majority of the positions that are open currently. But I've had recently been involved in interviews there as well. So I think some of our job offers are job offers there. So it's moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah. At least we're not at a point where we are receiving no applicants. So
We took some action to increase the pay levels.
yes,
Yeah.
that's definitely official. Anything else?
I just want to say again, you're doing a really good job, and it wasn't easy to walk into, but I appreciate all the effort.
I appreciate that very much. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Like if I did take constructive criticism, so hand it over.
Okay. All right, let's move on to administration. Do I have vouchers for you?
No vouchers.
All right.
Can I ask a question quick about vouchers though?
Sure.
Am I bringing my interim coordinator vouchers to this committee and my grants officer vouchers to economic development?
I hate to say it, but yes, you are.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
The dual role.
Okay.
So do you have a report for us or anything to discuss?
Well, I'm day 3 in the interim coordinator role. So I don't have a huge report, and a lot of what's been shared, as always, would be part of my report. But I just want to let everyone know that I have worked with IT, so I have access to all of Carrie's emails, and I'm keeping up with that, responding to them, to her calendar as well, all her files. So that has been handed over already. I reached out to department heads yesterday, said, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm here if you need me. I might not have all the answers, but I'll do the best to find them. Carrie was meeting monthly or bi-monthly with each department head for the most part. I'm going to try and keep those the same schedule that they have so I can continue to meet with them. If she didn't have one set with a department head, I'm going to set one up. Just to use that as an opportunity to get to know each other. They can share highlights and challenges in their department and really just catch me up so I can be of the most valuable support in this interim. And then I did set a department head meeting, so we will continue to do those monthly, where we bring all department heads together. That includes sheriffs, clerks, the elected offices, and so forth. So that's where I'm at right now on day 3.
Do you want to discuss, because we could move, or maybe we can't, I should ask Nikki, but we did discuss, and you have some ideas on your priorities, or should we just stay in line with the agenda right now, Nikki, and get to that point after?
Either way, it's fine. You just have to reorder it.
We'll just stay in line, because you're not going anywhere, right?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions for Amy on her report?
It was really nice to feel comfortable today when you're feeling hostility. That's wonderful. You too. You could go.
Appreciate that, Dave.
In harmony.
Yes. Like the town of Harmony.
Okay. Let's go to our treasurer. Point 6, interim action item. Set minimum bid for interim parcels 040-00713-0000 and 040-00711-0001. I've said the numbers
All right.
properly.
Yep. Okay, so the last meeting with you guys, I was actually not here. That was one that was rejected due to the township requesting that those houses be removed within 3 months of purchase. So they're back on the table today. I guess it just needed more discussion, whether it was something we wanted to put on there, whether legally we could put it on there. So
What's the problem?
the houses, I mean, weren't condemned, but they're in rough shape, so they're not safe for anybody to be in or around. So they basically requested the removal of those.
My
I don't
question.
I don't know that we have to do that, but it was requested. So I think that's why it got put on hold. So it just got brought back to the table. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if there's abatement issues that the health department is working with and tasked with, then that may change my otherwise answer that no, we don't have to demo the carpet house.
Right. Okay. So I guess if that's the answer, then I'm just requesting that we review those bids, the minimum bids again. I did request those 2 parcels go together and the starting bids start at $1,380, which is basically 60% of the assessed value of the land alone without the houses. They didn't meet the minimum requirement.
So wouldn't it be up to the township to ask them to do this if they purchase?
I mean,
it? Like,
she sent me photos of the,
township thing, right?
They had no control of the property.
So they're hoping that we could.
I think that might have
insert, but
just been the case, is that they just said that it's not, it's not safe for anybody to be walking through there. She did send me photos of the house and it's rough. So I can imagine whoever's going to purchase this land, that they're going to want to remove those anyways. There's no purpose of keeping them. They're worthless. So very, very, very run down. So
Demolition costs are good.
Yeah. That's why I just did the land. And honestly, I think we'll get the minimum bid for the land and for somebody to actually demo those. I think we'd get that $1,380. Personally, I think we could get that because the bids before we did get like $1,000 some. So
When I first arrived here, off of the station, Bill Hewitt was inspecting a house in Genoa that had been condemned by the village of Genoa, and the owner just walked away. And we had that discussion then that we were the holder of the land title, the county. The owner of the property, you would think, is responsible for that condemnation, following the condemnation procedure. But you're saying no. That means
Yeah,
nobody.
absolutely.
That
I mean,
means nobody.
Again, absent things like I can think of, certainly if there was some kind of abatement order out there or something, that'd be different. But in the vacuum of, we've just got this property that's an in-rent property that we're looking to bid out to the public, it's as is.
okay, so from our committee, you just want us to set the minimum bid for $1,380 and take off this stipulation from the township.
correct.
Motion to
That's
approve.
what I'm looking for today.
Thank you.
Wheatland Township. So I don't know, DeSoto area. I honestly don't know exactly where.
Okay, so I have Dave making that motion, Ole second, Any more discussion about this? All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? All right. And then discuss process for paying the lien holders on the in-rem properties.
Yes, so I think Mike is on the line, and we were discussing that, and he was wondering why the decision was made to pay lien holders. I can tell you that, and then I'll speak to what I know, because Mike and I have talked after. Oh, good, perfect. So I can tell you that we are one of the only counties that actually decided to pay the liens. And I believe it's just difficult to decide who we're gonna pay, how much we're gonna pay, and to issue just one check to the homeowner would be, well, okay, let me say that when we get proceeds back after these in-rems, we've got some options that changed a little after laws changed. So if we have extra proceeds, we can, but are not required to pay lien holders who may have interest in receiving. Now, let me also say that a lien holder could have, and I know Mike is of the practice, let me say Mike Wendell is tasked with our in-rem foreclosure process, works with our treasurer regularly in that regard. So you get these sale proceeds back. The county, it may, but is not required to then send those on to the lien holders that may have these interests in this claim. The lien holders are getting from Mike at the onset of the in-rem process notice. So the lien holders could on their own file a claim that would protect their rights and trigger the requirement to pay versus the may pay that the county would otherwise be operating under. Mike had wisely raised the question to Karen, wait, why are we doing this if we're not required to? Because there's administrative costs to it. What Mike did not have the opportunity to know was the history coming from this committee, which I'll remind you in a moment, for why you made the choice that you made. The other option, if you don't send it to the lien holders, county does not get to keep it. It goes to the debtor who has not been paying their bills. That was the committee's rationale for sending those sale proceeds to the lien holders versus that debtor. Now, with that said, I cannot speak to what, if any, difference in administrative costs are associated with cutting this check to a lien holder versus cutting it back to the debtor. I feel like it's probably about the same, but I don't know that for sure. And so, Karen, I don't know, I think for me, it's just, there's a lot of questions in regards to how we would pay, what lien holders, how much, what percentage. It's just kind of a big, I don't know. So I don't know if it's got to go back through like court.
We'll be right
And
back.
so I think Mike was like, well, why are we doing that? And I said, I don't know. We just decided we're going to pay the lien holders and there wasn't.
So
And I know
think-
Mike is prepared to offer
Yeah,
input
so
as well. with
what's
that background.
somewhat frustrating is the committee was posed with like, do you want to do it this way? And if there were these obstacles in the decision making, then that probably should have come then.
I don't know that there are obstacles. I think that's an assumption that may not be the case.
Okay. Mike, do you have insights? Because we did vote exactly, you summarized it perfectly. The opinion of the committee was if you had a debt and you didn't pay it, we would alleviate your debt essentially for you with the proceeds, and then anything over would go back to the previous owner. That is what we voted on. And that's problematic. Why?
So the issues are, we get a title report when we begin the in-rem process, and it'll list out mortgages, liens, judgments, et cetera, et cetera. As Nikki said, my practice has been to provide notice that is not statutorily required, but I thought was a good idea to anyone and everyone who has some kind of debt associated with the property. The issue is that doesn't necessarily prompt any kind of response from those entities. And so if we want to properly do things, we would need to, upon receipt of proceeds of the sale of the property, proactively reach out to these lien holders, confirm the amount of the lien that is, still applicable, find out how they want that paid, if there's any interest, get the, supporting documentation that may apply to those increased values. And then, some of these entities no longer exist. The judgment has outlived the underlying entity. And this is not something that we've needed to do previously. So I'm speaking from a more of a theoretical standpoint. I just mostly, and again, Nikki said this, I didn't have the history and I didn't understand the decision, the thought that went into the decision making. And so for me, it was just, why are we basically paying to be someone else's debt collector?
And I think that a couple things. One, a reminder to the committee, the only reason this is coming up at all is because of legislative changes recently that necessitated the committee's input not that long ago. And then the other thing is the one piece of new information that may or may not then inform and change your decision. You can either affirm the decision you already made or change it. That one piece of information that is new and different is that I did not know that Michael was doing the non-statutory but courtesy notice to those lien holders at the onset. That's the only change though in the fact pattern.
With that, just for my clarification, now that we know that, then let's say, he's saying not all lien holders reach back out for whatever reason, but if they were to reach back out, then would that trigger the county paying them?
Only if the quote reach back out is in the form of a lien, would that require the lawful authority to do so? Or a claim. I said lien, I meant claim, but yeah.
But that could trigger, if they took that step, that
If file a claim, we don't have the authority to do anything but pay them as long as it's a valid claim.
okay, well,
But then it's going back to the debtor. And that, again, was a decision you guys didn't like. Now you've got this added info though, and so.
I guess another thing to maybe think of is we're not getting these funds, right? So it doesn't really matter who's getting paid, but if the person is deceased after 5 years, we would get those funds back. And in this, like in the situation of this property, that's the case. So I have to write that check and I have to send it. But after 5 years, when it's not cashed, it's going to be county funds where, I'm just bringing that up just for. If I have to send it. Like, even if they're deceased and we know it, we still have to send that check. That is correct, right?
Well, the statute requires a reasonable effort. I asked this exact same question because the statute requires all reasonable efforts to locate the owner of the property. Well, if they're dead, I can pretty easily find them. There's, a gravestone or something marking it. So I've located the property owner, but yeah, what do I can't pay a dead person. And that's just one of the frustrating aspects of this legislative change, and one of the things that they didn't include any kind of guidance in.
Speak to a state at all?
What?
Does it speak to the estate at all, Mike, is what I'd asked. And maybe it's an issue we got to research given the new changes.
Yeah, I would say if there's, if it's still subject to probate or if there's a legal estate still open, then that's a person.
Exactly.
But these are things where we had someone who died in the 80s, I think, who's come up in one of these, and their immediate successors are all dead. It was probably the third or fourth generation before I could find even an inkling of someone who might be involved in it still. And like, who is the owner at that point?
Yeah, me too. I'm related somehow.
all right, committee, what are your thoughts now with this new information? Does it change what we originally did, or I ask you?
What can I make a motion on?
You don't have to act on anything if you guys decide, we're good with how it is. We've heard this info. You're not changing your you've already made a determination as to how you want these sale proceeds to go. If it's remaining the same, there's no action.
You could also wait until we get through this first cycle of NREMs and, you know, we can report, again, I've been speaking hypothetically, theoretically, once I have that concrete information as to how all of this plays out, I can come back and report and make a more informed recommendation at that point.
Mary?
What happens if they have more than one debtor?
We have
Order
to,
of priority.
Pardon?
we have to reach out and pay to each of them. The obvious question then is what happens if, because of interest or whatever, the multiple debts end up being more than the value of the proceeds of the sale? Do we make the determination as to who gets what percentage?
And I would be of the opinion, Mike, that we do, if we're operating under that may pay analysis. And, you know, we would follow the preference as far as what creditor has the superior claim or not, informal claim.
Like who holds the first mortgage?
Exactly, same thought, for sure. There's an order, the statutes define what creditor's order is. So if we spend all the sale proceeds on creditor number one, creditor number two doesn't get anything.
I do like the intention of the committee's first recommendation. I do hear it could have complexities. I personally like Mike's idea of let's go through a cycle and see how this really plays out. Those are my thoughts. Others?
To be honest, we've been fortunate because the ones that have been taken didn't have any. There were no liens. So it was easy. I just had to cut one check, but it is going to get more complex and complicated, and me working with Mike saying, how do I pay now? Once it comes to that point. So it's just resources, it's time, it's energy that we're not really benefiting from. So I think that was the purpose of Mike talking today is, you know, should we be doing it? I can tell you that, again, in the county, I know that there's probably one other county for sure that's paying liens and the rest are not.
Okay.
But it's most have decided not to. And I've asked them, why did everybody decide not to? And the simple answer is because we don't have to. That was their answer back when I asked, like, can you tell me why? Because I wanted more information for this committee to say, why should we or shouldn't we? Because at the time, it was new to me and I didn't have a lot of information for you guys to say, should we or shouldn't we do it?
Lauren and Charlie.
And the only comment I heard from the general public was that, you know, the guy's done the right thing by paying off the creditors, because people being able to come in and buy their own property back, they can theoretically move, you know, like your bankruptcy court. Okay, I'm buying it back. I'm going to bid $10 million on it because I get it all back anyway. I'm going to make sure I get it. In the meantime, I'm going to lose all the creditors. So it's done it as 100%. Right? If there's more administrative costs, that's just cost that we couldn't cover.
And I think the benefit to the committee of giving Mike the time to let this run its course the first time is that you'll have your answer to if there is in fact more administrative cost to going the route of paying the lien holders or not.
Or couldn't we then build that in? Like we pay our administrative costs and then we pay.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Charlie?
That was my comment. If you have a multiple lien property, estimate how much it's going to be, add that to your fees to start with it, then we're not doing it for nothing.
I just have a flat $1,500 administrative fee for my time, but Mike's is different. You know, when I get the bills, that gets figured into the equation. In regards to the people that did sell or did buy their properties back, they did not have any. But they didn't have any mortgages. They could have.
So
Okay,
on the,
committee.
on the one we just approved in A, the administrative fees weren't built into that
Yeah, they were.
at $1,380.
No, this is the minimum bid for the property that we're gonna sell. That has nothing to do with the proceeds.
When you set the minimum bid, don't you build in
No.
Don't fill in there.
Well, typically, I guess what we've done with this for the, minimum bid is it's 60% of the assessed value of the property. Or if the, property, if the expenses exceed that, we would do the expenses. In this situation, it wouldn't make sense to do that because the property's not worth that much. So I can't say it's $1,500 plus all the back taxes, and here's the minimum bid and nobody bids on it. That doesn't make sense either. So some of these, like, that's the logic we're using. But again, they don't make sense. Like this property from the village of Chaseburg that we ended up doing the dollar bids for, that was because it's in a floodplain. And at the time, the assessed value had a house on there that was no longer there anymore. I mean, so things change and the assessed value isn't worth what it is. If it's a little tiny parcel on a floodplain with nothing on it, nobody wants it. You can't even put a camper on it. So that's why we changed that. So, yeah, it's not always going to make sense. I mean, there's parcels that have raises done on them where, you know, there might be a $75,000 special charge on it and the lot's not worth $75,000 anymore. So we can't just say, well, this is what we have to get for it because this is what our expenses are. There's gotta be flexibility in the price or we will never sell it. So
Flexibility.
that's the logic that we use starting, but, you know, when I know those things, and if I know those things, I can definitely bring it to you guys before to say, you know what, that these houses are going to need to be removed. They're not worth anything. This is basically just going to be land. That's where that 1380 comes in.
You need to use the word more often.
What?
Flexibility.
Okay.
Well, in this situation, it kind of is flexibility because there has to be a starting point and we have to use some logic, but the logic doesn't always apply.
Well, I commend you for it.
So what does the committee want to do? I think we hold and see how it plays out.
I know.
That's my feeling too.
Okay. And we understand it may cost a little money.
Sure.
And then we'll be able to make a more educated guess on what we do with what extra costs may come with it.
Sure.
But I agree with what Lauren said. People were appreciative who were paying attention that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that makes sense. It's just for me, I'm like, okay, who do I pay? How do I pay? So it's just going to be working with Mike to figure out who's getting paid when and getting all those checks cut for all of those people versus here's one check, here's the amount.
Right. And I think we all understand that now and we're willing to hide it a year and see how it goes.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Take care. All right, administration transition action items. So it was discussed and set priorities for interim coordinator. Backwork has done a bit on this with Amy. You did meet with Carrie and you were able to assess what's realistic in this interim process. So why don't you share with us what you think the priorities should be at this point in time, knowing it could change and fluctuate as we go?
Yeah, so the job description for the coordinator, as you all know, has been set. And as the interim, that is the job description I am following. However, given that I'm also still the grants officer full-time, Carrie and I had talked about what responsibilities out of this job description do you need to prioritize in this interim. And so I did come up with a list I'm going to pass out, and Mary, I'll share it on the screen for you.
Okay, thank you.
Take one here. Oh, sorry. I will say that the ones I pulled out collectively probably would take up most of her time as the administrator, or would take up most of the time as the coordinator, but I do feel are very important to make sure that department heads, first and foremost, feel very supported. It's coming, Mary. Sorry, I got on my little.
Does everyone have a copy of the table?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
You see it, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. And again, this is what I pulled out as priorities. I'll run through them. I've mentioned some already, but have monthly check-in meetings with each department head. Keep those going. Schedule and facilitate monthly department head meetings. I've already scheduled that for April. Attend all committee meetings, which thankfully as grants officer, I already attend most of them just to stay up to speed on projects or so programs that might have grant funding. Attend all board of supervisor meetings, which I already do, and I'll give a report there. Handle questions and concerns from the public and work with department heads to resolve. So if there's any concerns or questions, public reaches out. I will handle those to the best of my ability or reach out to department heads or board supervisors for guidance on how to resolve those issues. Be an authorized signer of contracts and agreements, working of course with department heads and Nikki to determine if legal review is needed, as we discussed earlier. Have a weekly check-in with Lauren and or Allison to keep them updated on how the role is going and seek guidance as necessary.
You can come on over, but grab that piece of paper.
Overall, be available to department heads as situations arise to help them develop solutions and build and strengthen relationships with county board supervisors, many of whom I already have a good relationship with, but there's some that I don't know as well yet. So those are what stand out to me as priority as I do this role in the interim and the grants officer role. I think some of the biggest things that are in here would be special projects. So priority-based budgeting has been talked about a lot. I know there was talk about kind of getting a new face to our website. I feel that in the interim, I wouldn't have capacity to necessarily take those on unless you were to direct me otherwise, but that the permanent county coordinator should actually be the one to spearhead those projects with the board. But I open it up for your thoughts.
Can we authorize you to delegate those responsibilities to others?
What responsibilities? Like
The challenges that she pointed out,
the big projects? Well, I would say that until we have that position, like that is, once that position is finalized as to where we're going, that's who would spearhead those projects. You wouldn't take those on in an interim capacity.
Got it.
I mean, that's my thought of it. I think, personally, I think this is a really good list. I appreciate you spending the time with Carrie to kind of, it's realistic and yet it still keeps the connectivity and motion going. And I also think it's going to help support newer roles to have, because like you're doing awesome, but it would be great if there's a little more support your way. So go ahead.
Well, are you looking at, set hours, like split your time 50-50? In the two positions or what's that idea, plan? 20 hours this and 20 hours for grants, or can
I'm
grants?
not sure it's going to go like that. I don't know that that's realistic.
Yeah, because sometimes grants can be very time consuming. Then maybe times aren't, I don't know.
I mean, there are going to be weeks, like stuff is going to come up where I'm going to work a considerable amount of hours. Like I manage 2 roles in this way at the YMCA for 6 months. And sometimes you work 2 full-time jobs. Like I would pull 80 hours if needed. And sometimes less because I was able to manage my time and prioritize well. So, and delegate what needed. I would prefer not to work 80 hours every week, but I will do what needs to be done to get the job done, both jobs.
And I think we're all, I shouldn't say, but I'm hoping we're all, no one wants us to be a 6-month situation. We hope to be moving quickly.
Yes.
So we can.
Because we have applicants.
Yeah, we'll touch base on that later, where we're at with the screening process and all of that.
Yeah.
How does this committee feel about this is in my opinion, like good place to start. Things, once you get into the role, might bubble up, or things present that we may have to adjust. This seems like a reasonable place to start.
We don't want overtime.
Does this seem like a reasonable place to start?
I think
Mary Bringy?
I think it is. I think it's going to take a lot of time, but I think it's a good start.
Dave?
Great idea.
Mary?
It's fine. I'm trying to compare with what's in the contract to see if there's basically.
Don't have a contract.
Or,
Yeah,
job description, I'm sorry. That I think might be necessary, but whatever, it's a good start.
I don't know if it's really necessary to attend all committee. And it's going to be very informative for you to do that, but.
You do most of it anyway.
Yeah.
So we're not, it's part of what she does now.
Well, that's true. She's in every one that I go to, so.
So, yeah, that seems more reasonable than, it's not brand new, I guess.
It
is what I'm
crosses.
trying to say. It crosses roles.
And I think too, as a department head, Carrie was in her role when I would be at a home committee and presenting on a certain topic, to have her there as support and kind of back up to rephrase if I wasn't doing a good enough job or being clear, I think was just really nice to have that other person. So that's what I want to do for the department heads in this committee meetings as well.
The other part that I had brought up to Amy in this interim role, that if those department meetings or those committee meetings are meetings that may have HR or need HR presence that I'm not made aware of ahead of time, even if it may not necessarily be an agenda item, it could go that direction, where I've asked her, can you please come back and let me know on anything that went on that was HR, because I don't necessarily, like you said, is it necessary? I don't necessarily feel like it's necessary for my time in my small department for me to attend every single committee meeting. But if she's already present and come back and report, you need to be aware of what, it maybe wasn't an action item this month, but it's something that's in the works. It should be on your radar. It's beneficial for me and my time. It just seems more efficient, and she can do the same with all department heads. Like, this came up in this committee, kind of relates to your department. You should be aware of it.
I completely agree with Trish's statement, 100%.
I was just thinking that
Finance and budget.
for your time, for time wise there.
Yeah, for interim especially, but if she's.
It's also one of the most essential functions that the board has had is to get that report on the floor monthly of what has happened in committee meetings, which we never had before in administrators. So to be able to keep that going, I think is essential.
Or
If any of this gets too much, though, you just have to tell us when we connect weekly, or like, whoa, this is not working.
Tap it out.
Go to Mexico or something.
Yeah.
Dave?
Or it could be something as simple as the county board inviting department heads to come to our monthly meeting and give a report on what's going on in the committee.
How many department heads?
You
do we
want,
have?
that's not efficient. You want all department heads to come every meeting and give a report?
Well, you said we're going to be more flexible.
We are actually
Okay.
starting that with. Going to have a department head, like. Give a
Like a
report,
feature.
Like a feature one.
Yeah, but that doesn't connect that's not a monthly report telling us the status of what's happening in real time. I agree with that, having
If she was there.
an annual, I think that's a great thing
Just a
to get a
rotating thing.
base, a rotating thing, but that's not providing the county board with real-time information of what's going on.
I meant in the interim, if that became an issue, it's like attending every
Okay.
committee meeting.
The staffing for this committee is not necessarily on here, as well as a usage statistic, preparation, comparison of things that may be required by the board or the committee. That may be heard, but it's not specific.
Tell me more what you mean by staffing.
Well, that's one of the things that her predecessor made the comment on, and she'll have to determine if the staff is committee, which the minutes are done, that the agendas go out, that kind of thing.
I see you've been diligently taking
I
notes.
see.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's assumed,
But
but
it's
it's
not
not identified,
Yeah,
so
that,
I think it's a
for
priority.
the general government meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's
You want to
good.
be the facilitator.
Yes.
And then when it comes to items with respect to what's happening in the county for the county board, presentation, whether it's a comparison of, And it's information she's probably gonna garner from human resources or finance for comparison of where we're at in the finances or staffing, similar to the time when comment was made about vacancies in highway, and we have so many unfilled positions, but then there was the visual that shows, no, we've had this many hires and we've had this, that kind of thing, because that's the position, that's to know what's happening in the county.
Yeah.
All the way around. And then just with respect to your department head reports at meetings, her report that she gives at meetings oftentimes will encompass that, so that we know what's going on in departments generally.
Wonderful to have two attorneys at the table.
It's really good, actually.
It's great to have 5 committee members here too. And the board chair, sorry.
And I'm also town chairman.
He is.
So Amy, can you add, fair point, can you add just the note, general government meeting agenda prep facilitation, however?
Mhm.
And it's a work in progress.
Yes.
And then in your attend board supervisors meeting, you did mention you'd give the report as usual, but I think Mary was make sure to kind of stay on track with, it's not, every month was a little different, like here's a budget update or what was most pressing, but to make that part. Does that encapsulate what you're saying?
And make sure that it's geared to not only what's happening in the county, but it's the policy things that the county needs to address. With your background information that you're going to get. Yeah. WCA and
In terms of weekly check-in, we can figure out the best time, if it's something you want the 3 of us to do or every other.
I need to be running your.
Yeah. Okay. Anything more on discuss and set priorities? It says potential action items. So Nikki, is this a motion or this? I feel like we were given the authority from the county board to set interim priorities. I don't think it needs to go back there.
I don't think it does either. And yeah, I think a motion to just have it
accept.
reflected in the minutes that way.
Yes.
Motion.
Motion man, Dave, who will second?
I'll second it.
Mary, to accept the interim county coordinator priority responsibilities presented with the additions. Talk about. All in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Great. Okay, now we're going to go into closed session. I did ask if we could do both closed session at the same time, but for process, we are going to go in and out. So closed session interim administrative coordinator wage action item. The chair may entertain a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 for consideration of the wage of the interim administrative coordinator. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
Didn't we talk about that at the committee board meeting?
Oh.